Looking back, it almost feels absurd how perfect everything seemed. I was just weeks away from marrying Lauren, the love of my life, and my happiness felt untouchable. We had been together for nearly 5 years, and though our journey had its share of challenges, I believed we had grown stronger because of them. Our son Jimmy had recently celebrated his first birthday, and he was the light of our lives, a curious, bright-eyed little boy who filled our days with joy and wonder. Lauren and I had chosen to wait to get married until we were more settled, both emotionally and financially. At 25 years old, we were still learning and growing, navigating the stormy seas of youth when life threw us a surprise: Lauren's pregnancy. It was overwhelming at first, but we made it work. By the time Jimmy arrived, our love felt solid, our plans secure, and the wedding was meant to be a celebration of all we had overcome. But beneath the surface, cracks were forming. I was too caught up in the excitement to notice. Lauren seemed distracted at times, but I chalked it up to the stress of wedding planning. It was my best friend, Michael, who saw the signs I missed. Michael and I had grown up together. He was like a brother, someone who knew me better than I often knew myself. One evening, as we sat on the back porch sharing beers, he hesitated before speaking. "Ryan," he began, his voice heavy with concern, "there's something I need to tell you. And I'm only saying this because I care about you." His tone put me on edge immediately. I laughed it off, trying to lighten the mood, but Michael didn't smile. "There's been talk about Lauren," he said carefully. "Stuff I didn't want to believe at first. But you deserve to know. Some people are saying she's been seeing someone else. And there's a chance Jimmy might not be yours." The words hit me like a sledgehammer. My mind went blank as I tried to process what he just said. The idea seemed impossible, laughable even, but deep down, a cold tendril of doubt began to take hold. "You're wrong," I said, my voice trembling. "Lauren wouldn't do that. She loves me. She loves Jimmy." Michael looked at me with a mixture of pity and frustration. "I hope I'm wrong," he said softly. "I really do. But you can't walk into this marriage blind." That night, I lay awake, Michael's words replaying over and over in my mind. I wanted to dismiss them as baseless rumors, but the seed of doubt had been planted, and it was growing fast. The next day, I decided I couldn't live with the uncertainty. While Lauren was out running errands, I gathered one of Jimmy's old baby blankets and drove to a clinic an hour away. I submitted it for a paternity test, my hands shaking as I filled out the forms. The week that followed was a waking nightmare. I couldn't focus at work, couldn't sleep at night. Every time I looked at Jimmy, my chest ached with love and fear. Lauren noticed my distraction, but I brushed off her concerns with excuses about being tired or stressed. When the call finally came, the voice on the other end of the line was cold and clinical. "Mr. Ryan," the woman said, "I'm sorry to inform you, but the test results indicate that you are not the biological father of the child." I felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. The phone slipped from my hand as the weight of her words crashed over me. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. It all made sense now: the timing of Lauren's pregnancy, the moment she'd seemed distant, the small signs I had ignored or explained away. That night I didn't go home. I drove aimlessly for hours, my thoughts a chaotic storm of anger, heartbreak, and disbelief. How could she do this? How could she let me love and care for a child she knew wasn't mine? When I finally walked through the door, it was nearly midnight. The house was dark except for the soft glow of the living room lamp. Lauren was curled up on the couch, her phone in hand. She looked up as I entered, her face a mix of relief and frustration. "Where have you been?" she asked, her voice sharp with concern. "I've been calling you all night." I stood in the doorway, the weight of the truth crushing me. My voice was low and steady as I said, "We need to talk." Her brow furrowed in confusion. "What's going on?" she asked, sitting up. "Why do you look like that?" I stepped closer, my heart pounding. "I know, Lauren," I said, my voice trembling. "I know Jimmy isn't mine." The color drained from her face. For a moment, she just stared at me as if trying to comprehend what I'd said. "What are you talking about?" she whispered. "I had a paternity test done," I said, forcing the words out. "The results came back today." The room fell silent. The sound of the clock ticking seemed deafening. Finally, Lauren broke the silence, her voice shaking. "Ryan, I can explain." "Explain?" I snapped, my voice rising. "Explain how you lied to me? How you let me believe I was Jimmy's father for over a year? What is there to explain, Lauren?" She stood, tears streaming down her face. "It was a mistake," she sobbed. "It was just one time. I didn't mean for it to happen. I didn't know how to tell you." Her words felt like knives. "One time?" I said bitterly. "And you thought you could just hide it forever? Did you think I'd never find out?" She broke down completely, sobbing uncontrollably. "I was scared," she cried. "I thought you'd leave me. I didn't know what else to do." Her fear, her desperation, it didn't change the betrayal. "Who is he?" I demanded, my voice cold. "Who is Jimmy's real father?" Lauren hesitated, her hands trembling. "It was someone I worked with," she said finally, her voice barely audible. The evening air was heavy as Lauren's sobs echoed behind me, her voice breaking as she begged me not to leave. My hand gripped the door handle, knuckles white with tension. I could barely breathe. Every step away from that house, away from the life I thought I had built, felt like a fracture splitting me further apart. I loved Jimmy with every fiber of my being. But the truth was a cruel reminder that love doesn't always heal the deepest wounds. When I arrived at Michael's doorstep, he took one look at me and wordlessly stepped aside. He didn't need to ask if I was okay, the answer was etched into my expression. I sank onto his couch, my body numb from exhaustion and heartbreak. "What happened?" he finally asked, sitting across from me, his face a mix of concern and quiet resolve. "She admitted it," I muttered, staring blankly at the coffee table. "Jimmy isn't mine. Everything she told me, everything I believed, it was all a lie." Michael clenched his jaw, anger flickering in his eyes, but he didn't push. He knew I needed space to process, not another voice adding to the chaos in my mind. The next morning, I woke to sunlight streaming through the blinds, a stark contrast to the storm still raging inside me. Michael was already in the kitchen, his coffee cup steaming as he scrolled through his phone. "Morning," he said, glancing up. "How are you holding up?" I rubbed my temples, trying to will the pounding headache away. "I don't even know. One second I'm furious, the next I feel nothing. And then there's Jimmy." My voice broke and I stopped myself. "I don't even know what to do, Mike." He nodded, his expression serious. "You need to protect yourself. Did you call a lawyer yet?" I shook my head. I wouldn't even know where to start. Without hesitation, he scribbled a name and number on a sticky note and handed it to me. "Call Rebecca Owens. She's sharp, knows her stuff. She'll give it to you straight." That afternoon, I found myself parked outside a quiet office building, the note Michael had given me clutched tightly in my hand. The words blurred together as I read them over and over, trying to summon the courage to step inside. Finally, I took a deep breath, pushed open the car door and walked in. Rebecca Owens was a no-nonsense woman with sharp eyes that seemed to pierce through any facade. She wasted no time getting to the heart of my situation. "So," she began, her tone calm but direct, "your name is on the birth certificate?" I nodded, my stomach twisting with anxiety. "Yeah." Her pen hovered over her notepad for a moment before she looked up, her gaze steady. "That complicates things. Legally, you're considered Jimmy's father regardless of biology. If you want to contest paternity, there's a process, but..." Her voice softened slightly as she continued. "I need you to be prepared. Walking away from this won't be simple. And emotionally, well, that's a whole other battle." I swallowed hard, my chest tightening. "So even though he's not mine, I could still be responsible for him?" Rebecca nodded. "In the eyes of the law, you're his father. If you want to change that, you'll need to fight it. But Ryan, I need to ask, what do you want? This isn't just about legalities. This is about your life, your heart." Her words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. What did I want? To turn back time? To rebuild the life I thought I had? Or to finally face the truth no matter how much it hurt? That evening, I found myself back at Michael's, staring at the ceiling as the events of the past few days replayed in my mind. Every memory of Jimmy, every laugh, every first word, it all felt like shards of glass, cutting deeper with each thought. But there was one truth I couldn't ignore. No matter what, I loved that boy. Whether he was mine by blood or not, he had been my son in every way that mattered. And now, I had to decide if that love was enough to carry me through the pain. Rebecca paused, her gaze steady as she leaned back in her chair. "It depends on the state's laws," she said, her tone measured, "but in many cases, yes. However, if we can identify the biological father and prove paternity, you may be able to avoid further obligations." The thought of tracking down one of Lauren's past flings churned my stomach, but I nodded, even though she couldn't see me through the phone. "What do I need to do?" "We'll need a copy of the paternity test results, the birth certificate, and any documentation that could help identify the biological father. Once we have that, I'll file the necessary paperwork to begin the process." That evening, I sat on Michael's couch with my laptop open, staring at the documents Rebecca had emailed me. Each page felt like a dagger cutting away at the life I thought I had. This wasn't just about a broken relationship. It was about unraveling a story I'd built my entire world around. Jimmy's first steps, his giggles, the way he called me Dad with pure adoration, all of it was now tainted by lies. Michael sat down beside me, handing me a beer. "You're doing the right thing," he said firmly. I exhaled, shaking my head. "It doesn't feel like it. Feels cold. Like I'm abandoning him." Michael leaned forward, his voice steady but compassionate. "You're not abandoning him. You're taking care of yourself. You can't build a future on lies. Jimmy's a great kid, but his care isn't your responsibility. That's on Lauren, and whoever his real father is." His words didn't erase the guilt, but they planted a seed of clarity. Letting go of Jimmy, of the bond we'd shared, would be one of the hardest things I'd ever do, but it was necessary. The days blurred together as Rebecca worked tirelessly. She was as sharp as she was determined, and before long, we were preparing to formally challenge paternity. When I handed Lauren the legal paperwork, her face crumpled, tears streaming down her cheeks. "You're really doing this?" she sobbed. "You're just going to walk away from him? From us?" I swallowed hard, keeping my voice steady even though my heart felt like it was splintering. "This isn't about Jimmy. It's about the lies, Lauren. You put me in an impossible situation, and now I have to fix it." Her tears turned to rage. "Fix it? You're tearing this family apart. Jimmy loves you. How can you just abandon him?" I clenched my fists, forcing myself to stay calm. "This family fell apart the moment you decided to lie to me. I'm not abandoning anyone, I'm making things right." Lauren stormed off, slamming the door so hard the walls seemed to tremble. For a fleeting moment, I considered going after her, trying to salvage something from the wreckage. But deep down, I knew it was futile. Some things can't be mended, no matter how much you wish they could. Amid the chaos, an unexpected opportunity arose. Emily, a former colleague I hadn't spoken to in years, reached out. She'd heard about my situation and wanted to offer me a position at her company. The catch: the job was in Europe. "I know the timing isn't ideal," she said during our call, her voice warm yet professional. "But it's an incredible opportunity. Honestly, Ryan, I think getting away might be exactly what you need." At first, the idea felt too drastic. Leaving everything I'd ever known behind to start fresh in a foreign country? It seemed unthinkable. But the more I dwelled on it, the more it made sense. This wasn't just a career move, it was a chance to rebuild my life from the ground up. When I told Michael, he grinned. "You'd be crazy not to take it. New job, new country, sounds like the adventure you need." He was right. It was time to leave the past where it belonged and focus on my future. Rebecca and I worked tirelessly to challenge the paternity claim. The process was grueling. Lauren fought at every turn, claiming I was Jimmy's father in every way that mattered. But Rebecca was relentless. Using the paternity test and Lauren's own admissions of infidelity, we built a case strong enough to sway the court. The day the court ruled in my favor, a wave of relief washed over me. My name would be removed from Jimmy's birth certificate, and I was no longer legally obligated to support him. Yet the victory felt bittersweet. I'd done what was necessary, but the thought of never being part of Jimmy's life again still gnawed at my heart. Part of our success hinged on finding Jimmy's biological father. Michael, using his network of friends and acquaintances, managed to track down Aaron, a man who had briefly worked with Lauren around the time she got pregnant. When confronted, Aaron squirmed, denied everything, and finally agreed to a paternity test. The results came back positive. Aaron's reaction was predictable. "I don't have the money for this," he whined when pressed. "This is her problem, not mine." Rebecca's response was ice cold. "It's the state's problem now. You can try to dodge it, but they'll catch up with you." With Aaron legally bound to take responsibility, I felt a burden lift from my shoulders. The truth was out, and for the first time in months I felt free. As I packed my bags for Europe, I reflected on everything that had transpired. The life I'd planned was gone, but what lay ahead was a blank canvas. This experience had left scars, but it had also taught me lessons I'd carry forever. I'd been too trusting, too eager to believe in a future that wasn't real. But now I understood the importance of building a life on truth, no matter how painful. As the plane took off, I stared out the window, watching the horizon expand before me. The life I'd left behind was over, but a new chapter was beginning. And for the first time in a long time, I felt hope.